What's good, ladies and gents? Welcome back to MKO Boxing, aka MKO Pugilism. Like and subscribe on YouTube if you're new, and of course, follow on TikTok as well if you're new. So, let's get into it. Let's get into the chief support of the Jack Catterall versus Regis Prograis card, and that was Campbell Hatton versus Jimmy Joe Flint, a rematch of their fight which took place around 6 months or so ago, in which Campbell Hatton was given his first professional loss. And since that loss, Jimmy Joe Flint, I believe he'd lost twice, at least once or twice, coming into this fight. And Campbell Hatton, he hadn't fought since, so this was a rematch for them, and this was a chance for Campbell Hatton to kind of get his revenge. And unfortunately for him, that didn't happen. He didn't get his revenge. And let's just give a few thoughts. I'm just going to give a few of my thoughts about the fight. So, the fight opens up, and you can see a little bit of improvement in Campbell Hatton. There was next to no head movement in the first fight, and it was kind of the same in this fight, but you could see a little bit more thought in what he was doing. There was one or two feints thrown in there, and the fight was quite, to be honest, it was quite competitive for the practically the most part. I would say it was a 10 rounder, and I'd say the first 8 rounds were pretty competitive. It kind of swung back and forth, because as much as we know, Campbell Hatton, he has no real defense. He doesn't really have much of a defense. I mean, he comes forward. He's got a very aggressive style, but a lot of the time is like chins up in the air, and he's very easy to hit, and whatnot. That's true of him. But also, Jimmy Joe Flint was taking some lumps too. His eye was closed at the end of the fight, and as much as we say Hatton is defensively leaky, very very leaky, but he was also having his success because there was a defensive lapses for Jimmy Joe Flint. So both guys were pretty poor defensively. Jimmy Joe Flint, his boxing was a little bit more together, a little bit better, but I would say it was back and forth. It was pretty close for those sort of first 7-8 rounds. And for me, it really, there was, the difference really came between those last sort of, I would say, round 9, round 10. That's where we got to see the difference between the two. That's where Jimmy Joe Flynn sort of took over. So the previous rounds, you would have Hatton would have a bit of success, but then as he's having his success, he's kind of getting there, landing his shots, but then he's taking punches on the way out, or he's going in, head first, getting hit on his way into Jimmy Joe Flint, but then Flynn's open, and he's having, sorry, not Flynn, Flint is a bit open, and Hatton's able to land a few combinations, because Hatton, I mean, as much as he's defensively leaky, he's got a decent work rate, and he's very, he's very aggressive, and he really commits to the attacks. So he was able to have some success, but as I say, it was, it was an entertaining fight, low level fight, but it was quite entertaining. But the difference really, where the fight was mostly won for me, was those last sort of 2-3 rounds, 8, 9, and 10. That was where there was a bit of separation. That was where Jimmy Joe Flint sort of separated himself, and Campbell Hatton was sort of coming in and trying to mount the pressure on Flint, but Flint cleverly was taking little steps back and then landing combinations on Hatton. And even, as I say, when Hatton comes in and when he's able to sort of throw, Flint was making him miss quite a lot in those last couple of rounds, and then landing good counters on him. He managed to hurt him several times, and particularly in the last round, the 10th and last round, Flint was able to hurt Campbell Hatton again. And if he was more of a puncher, perhaps he might have been able to get Campbell Hatton out there in one of those final rounds. But to Campbell Hatton's credit, he held on, and he survived. He made it through the last couple of rounds. He made it through the fight, and he gave Flint more of a run than the last one. But as I say, it was close-ish. But I think with those last couple of rounds, Flint just walked away with it. So Campbell Hatton now's second pro defeat to the same guy, and a lot of people now sort of calling for Campbell Hatton to retire, to just sort of quit and give up boxing because clearly he's nowhere near as good as his father. And yeah, I mean, I admit that that's a fair point, I suppose, because if you're looking at boxing from the perspective of everyone that turns pro wants to be elite, and they want to be a world champion, etc., etc. If that was what he wanted to do, it looks like that probably won't ever happen. And that's not to be cruel or anything, but that's just to say that based on his ability, based on the ability he has, it doesn't really look like he can get to that level. I mean, he struggles at sort of area level, which is pretty much the lowest level of title you can get. Is sort of, you know, if you're from the southern area, northern area, Midlands area, and that looks to be the highest level that he can reach based on his skill level. And for me, I think there's a few options. Just as G-Man Boxing said, like he could literally, if he wants to carry on boxing, which I'm sure he does, he could do, just do it low key. Fight on small hall shows. Fight on shows that are not going to be televised and stuff, so you don't get the scrutiny, you don't get as much pressure, you don't get as many eyes on you. And that could be a route that he could take if he wants to stay in boxing. He could just simply go to do like small hall shows and just shows that are under the radar, and just sort of build up himself. Fight journeymen, fight low level guys, and go around to good gyms and just do sparring and really just humble himself and just learn his trade. He could do that. As others have pointed out, I think he also pointed out this as well, that he could go on the Misfits circuit, which is it's kind of like a bit of a clown show in a way, but it's another way where you could go there and you're fighting these YouTubers and the people that are social media influencers, sorry, and what KSI and Jake Paul and those guys have been doing. He could just go on and do that, and I think for me that's a route he could do. It's something where he's got enough ability to beat guys like that every day of the week, because those guys are not really boxers. He could go on that thing. He could do something else within boxing. But yeah, I think as far as boxing at a very high level, I mean, based on what we're seeing, he's not gonna be able to be successful in that respect. But yeah, I think with him, for me at least, the root of the problem is that I think he turned over pro too early. I think what he should have done is, and this wouldn't be guaranteed to work, because we've seen some fighters that have been exceptional amateurs and turned out to be unsuccessful pros. But I think he should have at least stayed amateur a bit longer and sort of learned the craft properly, try to get to a good level in the amateurs, maybe try and get to international level in the amateurs. Then at least you can say, right, I've boxed for England or something, and at least if you've done something like that, then it gives you a certain level of experience fighting in different countries, fighting elite guys, and you kind of, I think that's where he's gone wrong. To me personally, is that he left the amateur system too early, and when you do that, you don't learn your craft properly, and you're turned over when you're not really ready to turn over. And I think also you got the fact of he's a come forward aggressive fighter that has a weak, very leaky defense, and he also doesn't have punching power really. So I think that's another problem with him, is that his defense is not good, and he's comes forward. He's in your face all the time. Chins up high, and he wings in his putt, but then there's nothing really on it. There's not there's no real power on the shot. So I think that's another reason why he's run into problems. His style is very aggressive, but he doesn't have the power to get people out of there, because that power could sort of bail him out if he's in trouble. But the way he is, he's a light punching, come forward, aggressive fighter, and as soon as you come up against someone that can box like a Flint, and you're in trouble. So yeah, I don't know what he's going to do next, but I'd say, yeah, maybe do the quieter segment, do the smaller halls or something, or you just do the misfits, do those sort of circuits where you can still get fights. It's at a crazy level, it's a very, very different thing, but you can still make a lot of money doing it and make a bit of a name for yourself, because I think in the professional boxing side of things, he's at a very low level, and he needs to kind of just take some steps back, go right down to the basics, and just try and learn his craft, maybe on the outside the spotlight, because sometimes being under the spotlight when you're not ready and you're not really good enough is can be a problem. So anyway, that's my thoughts on it, and yeah, let me know yours in the comment section, and until next time, it's MKO Boxing, over and out.